looking back at Rival Sons history, something I always found so interesting about Rival Sons is that you guys, at one point were on Earache Records, which, for those that don't know, is predominantly an extreme metal label. So obviously a bit of a shocking pairing, I guess, when you look at the rest of their roster. But, and it was funny, a few months ago, I was talking to Charlie Starr from Blackberry Smoke. They were on Earache over in Europe. And, he said that, the label was getting some backlash from fans of bands in the label, like, what the fuck are you guys doing signing this band ain't metal, But then I was watching something with you where you guys were you were talking about the early tour that you guys did with Judas Priest and Queensryche, and there was a little bit of hesitancy. You guys were like, well, this isn't really our scene. But then you said that Digby Pearson from the label said he told you that you guys make the rock and roll music that came just before those bands came out. And to me, that was like this, I don't know, it was like this light bulb moment. Like, what a great way to point that out, because I think Rival Sons on Earache with all these death metal and grindcore bands, it doesn't make sense. But then when he put it like that, it's like, oh shit, now this makes a ton of sense, actually.
I think that, to Digby's credit, and I believe it was Digby and it was Digby to his credit, bringing that up. It was easier to wrap our heads around, like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. I get it. So like seeing ourselves as part of that lineage, I think was important. And then ultimately treating the entire situation as a much more inclusive thing, and seeing the ways in which we're similar as opposed to the ways that we're different. And I mean, that's always a good thing.
Of course.
To look like to look at like early Priest and look at the first two records and be like, oh, wait a minute, I get that. And especially after having the time and like talking with Rob in those early days for us, and him just being so gracious and offering some really good advice, really, really good advice. His number one thing was just stay together, you guys. You want to make it? Stay together. And you think like, well, yeah, you stay together. It's hard.
Sure.
It's hard for bands to stay together. You go through a lot of shit together. Like, man, you go through a lot. People grow. Your artistic approach changes. I mean, who you are continues to change. And I think that that's one thing for Rival Sons, that as we've changed as people, it's reflected in the music, So if you look at those early records, you look at, like the material that we performed on the Pair of Aces with the Before the Fire record, and then the EP. And then, after that, you have the Pressure and Time album, Head Down, and so on and so on. Well, if you look at that early material, and then you look at like our last two studio albums that we put out last year, we released two different records last year. Both of those records are wildly different from that early material. And that's reflective of our growth just as people individually, but then collectively, the band as a unit, having grown in further and further in our own direction, and to my opinion, wearing those early influences less and less and less, and hoping to purvey our own style as much as possible, in a very organic way. So staying together and following Rob's advice, I'm glad we did, because now we're able to write and produce the type of music that we do now, that there would have been no way that we would have been capable of that in those earlier years, because it takes experience.